first event, like 1,000 people show up, shoes sell out in seconds, and you're just like, is it me? Is it something else? I mean, we are number one in China, above and beyond anything else, bigger than Nike. I think probably 10 times of what Li Ning is, but we're not known at the end of the day. So it's almost like the sleeping, giant. Essentially, they brought us in to globalize the brand. People know the legacy players from Nike, Adidas, Lulu, Puma, everyone down the portfolio. They haven't heard of ANTA, and us using Kyrie Irving as almost as a Trojan horse, if you will. It allows us to enter into the conversation of sports.
And you just open up the first store, right? I mean, I saw the photos and the crowd was like spilling out.
Yes. That's just one of those like pinch me moments, if you will.
As you launch into the US, what do you think is the number one thing you have to get right over, say, the next 12 months?
Community.
Right.
People matter at the end of the day.
You said that so quickly.
I walked in 2.5 years ago and nobody knew me. And now I walk into the Mavs arena and they're like, hey, Christian, hey.
Christian, incredibly excited for today's episode. Thanks for making it out.
No, thanks for having me.
You've had an incredible career through ANTA now, but maybe give everyone a quick background on who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Born and raised Los Angeles, California. This is home. Glad this to be home. I played sports at an early age. My mom was a group exercise instructor, so music and movement has always kind of been key to who I was. And if you would have asked me when I was, 17 years old, graduating high school, what I wanted to do when I wanted to grow up, I would have gave you the Jerry Maguire answer: show me the money, and I wanted to be a sports agent. And, started my career actually interning for the Pac-10. I sound like a dinosaur when I say that, as now it's the Pac-12 or Big Ten, and that's all completely moved. But essentially, I'd say my career's kind of been a snowball of just working initially with the Pac-10, then with AEG there. Eventually got to CAA my junior year, and I said, all right, I'm an agent. Was working at CAA, and that was super fun. Worked with Nigel Houston and Chris Bosch and those guys. And my senior year, had the opportunity to intern at Adidas and fell in love with the football team and started doing, grassroots basketball.
So that's when you got into the world of sports.
Yeah, that's when I officially got into the world of sports and, graduated college at University of Oregon, ran track there. And I said, okay, do I want to become an agent, go back to LA and go sit in the mailroom, or do I want to, go do fun things at the brand level? And ended up picking Adidas, and that was kind of off to the races. I ended up being their first newsroom hire. Newsroom is social media PR. So, I was doing Instagram, Snapchat, Adidas Football US. I started with my thumbs, back in the day. But it's blossomed in there from working in digital marketing, brand marketing on the football side. Spent some time at the National Football League for a season working on branding. Super Bowl 53, 54, one of those in there. The 28-3 Tom Brady comeback. I worked on all the decor for that. So that was a cool
That's pretty cool.
Super Bowl in Houston. Amazing opportunity there. I worked on the product side of Adidas, worked with Snoop, Pat Mahomes, Yeezy, Pharrell, all those great collaborators in the Adidas portfolio. Spent some time working with Jerry Rice and his family over at Goatfield as their head of marketing, so did a little bit on the energy side of things. And then I jokingly say this, I was doing my 200-hour yoga teacher training. I'm also a yoga teacher on the side, so if you guys want to come to a class anytime on Sundays. But I was doing my yoga teacher training in Bali, and I get this LinkedIn message that says, hey, we're hiring a head of marketing for ANTA in the United States. I said, who? I said, what? And, a quick Google search, find out Klay Thompson, Kyrie Irving. And I said, okay, this is interesting.
I'll take the call.
I took a call. It was at 10 p.m. at night, of course, because China hours and whatnot. And they said, yeah, this is real. This isn't a scam. This is a real. We signed Kyrie. We got to launch a brand. And for me getting hired, I would just call it December 1st to us launching the brand really that March, 90 days later. It went from 0 to 100.
Launching here in the US though, right?
Correct.
I didn't realize that they're the third largest in the world behind Adidas and Nike, right?
Correct, yes. And like I said, also younger than both of those brands as well. It's just being 35 years old, starting in 1991. But China, we are number one in China, above and beyond anything else, bigger than Nike. I think probably 10 times of what Li Ning is. Wow. And essentially they brought us in to globalize the brand, to westernize the brand. So did a lot within North America. We've done some stuff in Europe as well, and continuing to grow the brand outside of China.
And you just open up the first store, right? I saw the photos and the crowd was like spilling out.
Yes. That's just one of those like pinch me moments, if you will, of just like, ANTA is known for retail. We have over 12,000 stores across broader China. If you go to Shanghai in the Bund, it's kind of like our Grove, if you will, or big shopping center. You'll see 5 different ANTA stores within a 1 mile. Like that is really our strength. So for us to have our first retail presence here in Beverly Hills, of all places, on Beverly Drive, it's just special, right? To be part of the kind of the ANTA Cool Kids Club, but also just to show that strength of retail.
Love it. So market entry into the US, you've been
Yeah.
charged with that in many ways, and joining a
Mhm.
very small team
Yeah.
here in the US, which must be pretty exciting.
Absolutely.
What's the game plan? Like, is it to win the game of awareness and just everyone to know about you, or
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
do you compete?
Yeah, no, great question. I say we're not naive to the aspect that we know we're strong, but we're not known at the end of the day.
Mm,
So it's almost like the sleeping, giant, or the monster underneath the bed, so to speak. A little Monsters Inc. reference for you. But for us, it's how to build that brand awareness. It's disruption at the end of the day, right? I think people know the legacy players from Nike, Adidas, Lulu, Puma, everyone down the portfolio, but they haven't heard of ANTA,
mm,
and us using Kyrie Irving as almost as a Trojan horse, if you will, that allows us to enter into the conversation of sports, especially on the basketball side. And obviously, Kyrie is a mega star in his own. Clay Thompson, another one of our signed assets. It allows us to enter into the conversation. And from there, we can kind of pivot and say, hey, you like our basketball shoes? Let me show you running. Let me show you lifestyle. Let me show you some of our outdoor and trail stuff. So, but yeah, awareness is the name of the game at the end of the day, and then continuing to just grow our overall approach across retail.
As you launch into the US, what do you think is the number one thing you have to get right over, say, the next 12 months?
Community,
Right.
people matter at the end of the day. I think your first impression is always your best impression at the end of the day, right? You always want to look your best, and
Mm.
for us,
You
people are.
said that so quickly.
Yeah, I live it. I live,
Yeah.
like I said, as my personal yoga teacher side of greeting people with their name as they walk through. Those are principles that I take to myself in the work environment. And I'll tell you, the first activation we did with ANTA was at Sneaker Politics in Deep Ellum, and that was about 2.5 years ago. And we had probably 700 people flooding into the streets of Deep Ellum. We had a block party, and just seeing the embrace that the city of Dallas has given me as an individual, of someone where I walked in 2.5 years ago and nobody knew me, and now I walk into the Mavs arena and they're like, "Hey, Christian, hey, hey, hey." But we just made it personal. We
Yep.
tried to make a connection with the consumers. Kai is the most personable athlete you'll ever meet. He always asks how your family is. He considers his fans to be the tribe and brings that together. So us as marketers, we try to bring that extension. And honestly, it's a bit of a snowball.
Mm.
I would say the people that I met day one, tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend, and that snowball's gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. And whether it was New York Fashion Week that we did last fall, or it was the peer activation or the store opening, those same people keep showing up. And I say, guys, you don't live in Los Angeles. You're traveling to come be part of our events. And that's the cool part, is just seeing this community continue to grow and
How do
grow.
you make it compound? I mean, community is it's
Yeah.
almost like marketers saying brand,
Sure,
right? It's
sure.
like,
It's
all
a
right,
buzzword.
let's just go.
It's a
And
buzzword. Yeah. In
at
a
a
lot of
leadership
ways.
level or in the boardroom, it's like, all right, where are we actually investing?
Right.
Because there's so many places. How do you make community actually work? Because I feel like it's
Yeah.
in the DNA of the company. It has to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's different communities that we're tapping into, right? There is your influencer community, the
Hmm.
people that are really driving the overall voice and the narrative of the category. There's your grassroots community, the kids that are truly playing basketball, the future stars of
Sure.
tomorrow. There's the NBA community, right? We've been aggressive with all the different athletes that we've been trying to sign. And I've pitched a bunch of different athletes over the past couple of years, and that's gotten around, between the agent community, the athlete community. So it's almost like little micro pockets that we're consistently going after. And I think you get an event like All Star where everything really comes together. You
Mm.
have the best All Stars there. You have the city of Los Angeles. You have high school kids being involved. And it really just comes together in this like almost Venn diagram of a way where you have all this great synergy that comes together.
You obviously work with so many amazing talent
Mhm.
across the US now and globally. How do you know who to work with? I mean, is it the alignment to product, alignment to
Yeah.
community? How do you measure their success at a business level? Is it revenue
Absolutely.
generated?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think if you were to go back probably a couple years ago, everyone was like brand, brand,
Yeah.
brand, right? It was almost like that buzzword of everyone's like, I got a brand. I think people realize that followers doesn't mean, money at the end of the day,
Right.
right? So now everyone's like, I want to create a business, right? So you're seeing the extension of these celebrity personalities, starting to go off and create their own products, white label or merchandise or whatever the stuff it is. And I think it's a nice little synergy between the two, right? We're looking for people that are able to have a captive audience, and also those people that are able to essentially connect with their audience in an authentic way. I think that's probably the
Mm.
worst thing you can do is you get somebody who's selling water or selling burgers and they don't even believe in the product that they sell at the end of the day, right? So,
You turn up, they're sad, they have no sense of community, don't care about
right.
the customer, gonna go home,
100%,
etc. Yeah.
100%. I mean, even I would say the influencers that I connect with, I find naturally on my own on Instagram. Like that's
Mm.
how I do, my big dig, if you will. I'm scrolling around and I see someone who's either talking about the product or interested in sneakers. I reach out to them and I say, hey, have you heard of ANTA? I build that relationship there, and we talk shop a little bit,
Mm.
and I say, hey, I'd love to extend a partnership with you and figure something out that makes sense.
Not just
So
the random talent manager that reaches out,
yeah, oh
for
man,
the deal, right?
God bless my email and LinkedIn. No offense to anyone out there, but they're flooded at the end of the day, and I'd almost like the process where I'm gonna find you before you find me.
Mm. I wanna go back to your time when you were at GOAT,
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah,
and you tripled revenue in the first year there, which
yeah,
would have been a pretty crazy experience.
yeah,
If you look
absolutely.
back on your time there, what were the levers that you pulled to really make that possible practically?
Yeah, paid media. I almost feel like growth marketing is this ubiquitous term of like, what is it, right? Like, and all of that. And, I done some paid back in the Adidas days, but really just being more hands on in a very small boutique business,
Mm.
just with, Mr. Rice's family, is son in law, TJ, and then his daughter Jaquee. But essentially, we turned on paid media in a major way, both with Amazon and direct to consumer through
How did you
goatfuel.com.
make it work?
Part of it was just finding the right influencers that essentially could create content that really resonated with the audience. Second was, we had a couple great agency partners that were essentially optimizing our ads. We were playing around with different hooks at the time.
Was there a
Uh,
particular campaign that stands out as really moving the needle?
We did. It was, I mean, essentially we were trying to, give the overall brand impression of what a goat meant, right?
Mm.
Obviously greatest of all time. We can obviously point to Mr. Rice and from the football field standpoint, but we wanted to highlight kind of goats within their own field. So we took three different people, one of them being the customizers, Marcus Rivero, Souls by Sir, one of my guys that I knew from the Adidas days. We took an artist, musician, and then one other person, I can't remember off the top of my head, but essentially, we did a day in their life, and we essentially took, anecdotal. How does goat fuel help them throughout their creative process, and really story told around that, and essentially used them of pillars of connectivity at the end of
Mm.
the day. And I think people found a connection with them, and then using media to really amplify that to connect in a way. It really blossomed just our overall audience.
It's crazy because a lot of these ideas around day in the life or
Hmm.
growth marketing, chucking all your money to Meta,
Yeah,
these are what brands rely on or try to rely on to grow today, but it's just a
absolutely,
completely different world.
absolutely.
Meta is just doesn't deliver the same returns anymore.
Right, right,
Day in the life, I mean, everyone does that.
right. Absolutely. I was gonna
It
say a
feels
couple of
like you've
years.
got to be always on the
Yes,
forefront of
yes.
experimentation. How do you
Mhm.
foster a culture of that at Answer today?
You got to try things. You got to be willing to take risks. I say that probably the best money spent is the money that you don't probably even use some of the times. Of you put something out there and you say, well, it's not great. Just give it a try at
Mm.
the end of the day. So I think I remember even back on the goat days, to kind of go back to that, we did SMS marketing for the first time, and people were like, why should we do that? We got Klaviyo email. Like, why do I need to do something else? And we did SMS, and I think it did like triple of what any email did. And I said, triple down on that.
Yeah.
We'll do that more. And I think it was like a baseball campaign that we were doing. And it just like the sales were just astronomical of just something we were just like, well, is that gonna work?
Mm.
And just be willing to continuously try things. And I think even on the Anta side, that's what we kind of press ourselves to do, is just like, hey, you can't play in the safe space. NBA All Star was here, and Kai came up to us and he said, "Hey, I want to do a family fun day." And right, you look at All Star, it's parties, it's brunches, it's more grown
It's
people things.
party,
It's
yeah.
it's 21 plus, right? It's the biggest stars of the day. And Kai's like, I want to be with my family and my kids, and I want to bring families together. And we were like, okay, cool. And we working with our agency team Epiphany, we put together this family fun day at the pier, and it was so counterculture to what everyone was. And people just loved it at the
But
end
it
of the
stood
day.
out.
'Cause it was different.
Mm.
It was different, I always like to say, you gotta zig when everyone else is zagging at the end of the day, and, if you're going that direction, I'm gonna go over here, and it's hard to do. It's hard to do something on your own, right? That groupthink is so comfortable sometimes.
Back on your point around SMS marketing being such a
Yeah,
needle mover, a revenue driver, how are you thinking
yeah.
about that today? I mean, it's
It
such a huge topic.
it's honestly my personal as a consumer myself, I had get tons of emails that all just
Nobody reads them.
stay in the Google spam folder, right? Like they don't even cross over into the primary thing, right? I'm a big concert goer. I'm wearing a Tomorrowland sweatshirt. So when a concert comes out, I have almost every single artist, like their phone number now, like tagged in. So whether it's John Summit or Dom Dollar or whatever, and I get their message. Rufus Du Sol, right? They just launched tickets in LA. Almost impossible tickets to
Oh my
get.
God, amazing. I just went to that in Sydney.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Fantastic. Love them as a group. But then they sent that message there. I was on it. And they sent that reminder, like tickets live in 30 minutes. I said, stop everything. I'm going to my computer and I'm doing this. Right. So I think just that way of just the way that we're communicating now is just so much more of a direct approach. I look at even social media. Everyone has so many followers now.
I mean, what would you be
it's
saying to a brand if they weren't investing in SMS?
it's a huge miss. I think you gotta it's 360 in the aspect that wherever your consumers are the most of us are in our hands, in our phones, 90% of the day. You just you gotta get to where they are, right? I think you gotta look at what is the older ways of marketing. Klaviyo is always gonna be there from a email standpoint. But how many emails have you signed up for at this point,
Mm.
right? I almost think that SMS just hasn't reached that threshold where you're just like, all right, enough. Like this is now spam. Like stop the big STOP to stop that. So I would highly advise. I think SMS to say it's new by any means, but you gotta check all your bases.
I think
Okay.
there's huge push on, particularly with AI now,
Hmm.
personalization in things like SMS, email, on your
Yeah,
website, in your content. How are you
absolutely.
thinking about AI at Anta?
Yeah, AI is. I personally use it on my day to day. Whether it is I'm composing something and I want someone to check it, or it's an aspect I'm putting together a marketing plan and I just put the prompt in there and I said, hey, give me hard feedback, on this marketing plan, and
And it
I
does, right?
yeah, I do
No
it.
feedback sandwich. I mean,
Yeah, no,
the
exactly.
yeah,
I said, man, give me the hard truth of it. I said we used Instant about back end of last year, and it was brought on by one of our agency partners, Richardson Saint. And after the first month, I think we did six digits within the first month of December. And I was talking to Izu, the CEO over there, and I was like, "What exactly in this?" And he was just like, "Well, they take the platform, they look at when you're shopping, the time of day, all your shopping habits, and it's just like it's taking all this data and computing it in a matter of seconds
mm.
to make you a stronger marketer, to be more timely, and more intentional in the things that you're doing." And he said, "Man, a normal person can't do that, right? Like I can't computationally from a Klaviyo standpoint say, all right, we're sending you this, and this there." You're taking all these thousands of data points and simplify them in seconds to be able to become a better marketer. So I think it's 100%. It's
Mm.
the future in a lot of ways. I do think there are some pitfalls when it comes to creative. How many people have you seen get blasted over AI creative? I belong to Equinox. They came out with a huge AI campaign to start the year off, and their
And it was
comment section,
horrible.
it
Yeah.
was a bloodbath. I mean, maybe any pub is good pub. It might have helped them at the end of the day. I was walking in there and I was like, oh man, these guys are getting torn apart. I feel bad for the social media community manager. So, creatively, I think AI is in a tough place right now. I think it's an opportunity to do better with it. Actually, with Anta, we've used AI on the creative side for some of the animation stuff that help you
Nice.
essentially
What tools are you using?
simplify. It was through our agency. I don't know the
Okay.
tools off the top of my head, but I do know our designers are using
But
a
it just
lot of.
like speeds it up, right?
Correct,
Yeah.
correct. Yeah, it just takes a lot of that production work out of hours that just allows our designers to work on more of the big picture, and some of the more minute details, can kind of just, speed through those.
What do you think a lot of marketing teams or get wrong? I mean, we always talk about the things to do,
Mm,
to not do, etc. But what do you think a lot of marketing teams just simply get wrong?
hide behind money.
Hmm.
And I think in a really honest way, I think
How do you
I
get out of that
I
trap though?
I've had massive budgets. I've had tiny budgets. The massive budgets you can hide behind, big spend here, paid media there, big event, and you're not necessarily
Seasonality.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're not necessarily looking at a lot of the details on things. And I think that's one thing that actually the ANTA finance department has pressed upon me as I'm submitting proposal for things to get approved, they're constantly looking at it and saying, hey, can you optimize this cost here?
Mm.
Hey, can you do more here? Hey, let's be challenged here. And like I said, it's made me a stronger marketer because every dollar became more meaningful at the end of the day. I'd had campaigns where I was just like, oh yeah, that's a rounding error, sure, 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 and you're just kind of moving along. But now being able to do essentially more with less, it allows you to actually do more things.
Hmm.
So I think that intentionality with every dollar that you spend, I think it becomes a superpower because your dollar goes further.
I mean, I think a lot of companies move the fastest when they're like slammed against the wall
For
with
sure.
time, money,
Yeah.
not enough talent. You always move the fastest when you're
Right.
limited on resources. How are you shaping the team at Anta now? Obviously, huge opportunity in the
Absolutely.
US. Arguably, as a huge company, right?
Right.
They would have so much cash to just throw it.
Right.
But it seems
Right.
like they're doing it pretty smart, or you guys are doing it very, very smart as you enter into the US
Absolutely.
with a lean team, right?
Ye-
Why are you doing that?
Yeah, being intentional with every single thing that we're doing. Like I said, it's no secret that we brought in Kyrie to lead the charge on it. It's no secret why our first store is in Beverly Hills,
Mm,
and essentially building, that infrastructure there. We started out with, our own .com, ANTA.com, to being a really big driver. And we knew that was going to be essentially the moneymaker in a lot of ways. We're growing strategically within our overall retail footprint. So we like to always use the phrase, you got to crawl before you walk, before you run, at the end of the
mm.
day. And there's a lot of times you want to go to 0 to 100 and you're sometimes skipping the steps, but you got to be
Why
fundamental.
is now the best time? I mean, the brand is so huge. I think a lot of
Yeah.
people just don't realize how big it is.
I think that the partnership makes sense at the end of the
Mm,
day, right? I think it's also it's an appetite for growth,
right.
and continuing to have that mindset of essentially what is next.
Yep.
I think if you were to look at just overall from a global landscape right now, the world seems smaller than ever.
Mm,
I think there was probably an ignorance on my part that said, oh, things that happen on, Douyin and Red Note and other Chinese social media, they'll never happen. They'll never come on over. And like we saw content that we posted in China going viral in the United States. I
mm.
was like, whoa, that wasn't even posted on Instagram. It wasn't posted on TikTok. That was on, Chinese channels that were coming on over. So, I think the ignorance on our side to say, oh man, out of sight, out of mind, what happens in China doesn't happen in the United States. What happens anywhere happens everywhere
Right.
now, right? That's a huge change in just how viral social media can go.
How do you balance the amount of effort that goes behind e-commerce
hmm
versus in-store?
It's a good question. I think from an omni-channel approach, you want to hit consumers on every single touch point.
Mm,
I kind of made this joke with our executives early on, where we were talking about just like the necessary of paid media.
right.
And I made the analogy that paid media was rent. And I essentially gave the example and I said, man, if you guys had a store in Times Square, you'd be paying, a couple $100,000 for rent every day. But what does that rent buy you? It buys you the millions of people that go through Times Square every single day
Mm.
that might happen to see your store, might happen to see a window or the facade and say, oh, I'm interested. What's Anta? Let me go check it out. Right.
And that's why you've got M&M's, Lego,
Right,
this,
exactly. You got
Nike.
all those
Yeah.
big brands there, right? And I said, man, paid media is the same exact thing. But honestly, I probably have a little bit more tailored the approach that says, hey, I'm going to go to you because you like Kyrie Irving or you like a basketball shoe or, you're interested in these various things. So I think that was the approach that kind of get people's heads to turn that said, hey, we want to put our retail environments in high traffic areas. How are we doing the same thing from a top of funnel standpoint within
Mm.
our own marketing to make sure that we're driving that traffic and driving that overall awareness? So like I said, I think that's the high level of just how we're building that brand awareness here in the states. But I think just the ability of whether you are upselling and that personal connection between a sales associate and a consumer to be able to tell you about the brand, try on product, have that great in store experience. It's almost like how do you close that loop?
Mm.
On a Monday, I had a great experience with the brand. You could follow up on a Tuesday or Wednesday with an email or the next month or week or whatever that is. You're closing that loop consistently, and then social
What are
media
you
is that
doing with
every day.
retention marketing today?
Just email marketing for the most part. Now we're using the basic Meta, basic Google. Your email retargeting.
Mhm.
Probably efforts that we could be doing a little bit better in, but
I mean,
trying
huge focus
to.
on community, right?
Yeah,
And and
absolutely.
something you speak about a lot or care a lot about is just loyalty. If you're going to win a market,
Yep,
customers need to keep coming back
for sure.
consistently,
Right.
always. You
Subscribers, that's a big KPI for us at the end of the day. Is just getting, number of subscribers, getting that CRM data, being able to have that banked in there. And there's also looking at purchasing history at the end of the day, right? It says, hey, are you into running shoes? Okay, what kind of running shoes are you buying? Oh, you're probably getting ready for a marathon. Oh, okay, cool. Let's plan against that. So, I think we're just trying to get to know our consumers better and better with every interaction.
How are you investing in customer loyalty? Is there anything creative that you're doing?
Probably nothing on that's out of the ordinary. I would say,
Still too early.
We're doing some specialized promotions with that. I think one of the big things that I enjoy that we do is we're trying to make that connection between the digital and the physical. So every single event that we have, our top consumers are getting special invites to that. I've actually gotten to know a lot of the consumers personally online because they've come to our events, and just to be able to experience the brand and just have personal chats, and we've stayed in touch. So, I think that digital presence leaking into the actual IRL, if you will, I think that's a really cool thing for me to see.
What about content creation? I mean, that seems to be a huge way. Influencers would be a big part of that strategy.
Yeah.
How do you plan on getting in front of everyone?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, the biggest influencer we have is Mr. Irving. So, he is we build around him.
Yep.
I always like to say that,
Huge.
he is the splash, and as the marketing department, we're the ripple at the end of the day, right? So, we react to what he does, and essentially, trying to make that bigger and bigger. But as it kind of gets down to the tribe, as we like to say, the different influencers, it's just building that natural, relationship with them. They are obviously content creators, but how can I make their life easier?
Right.
Can I bring them to an experience that gives them, the ability to create content that's unique? Can I give them a product or set them up in a situation, whether they're training for something or if they're talking about their rundown of
So it's
sneakers
not
for
just
the
going to happen.
week?
Like you need to set them up to be
Yeah,
successful.
I mean, there's, actually probably one of my favorite ones. Shout out Marcellus, lives in Sacramento, and he's doing this challenge where he essentially is trying to make a trick shot. And every time he like hits this little like pole that's behind his hoop, he cash apps like someone $25. And I think it was like day 10 or whatever, and he was wearing an ANTA shirt, and he ended up making the shot. And it became a moment for us at
Right.
the end of the day because obviously he made it. So, and he's got Cash App, everyone's Cash App in the comment section. The comment section's going crazy. I go on there as, on the Anta handle, and I say, oh, it must have been the shirt, right? And he engages with it. And now all of a sudden, like I said, not to crash his moment, but we kind of crashed his moment and said, oh man, it's got to be the shoes, right? Got to be the shirt, right? So I think it's taking those natural, organic moments that just happen every single day, and how can we insert ourselves authentically?
It's like at the Olympics recently when the
Sports bra.
right?
Yeah,
Did you
absolutely.
get a big payday for that? Isn't that the that's the word of mouth?
I think she did. I mean, the Olympics are always such an interesting one. I mean, even taking it back to Michael Jordan back in the day when I think Reebok was the sponsor and Jordan had the flag over his chest.
Yeah.
You've seen people like Pat Mahomes when Texas Tech was, signed with Nike. He put the Adidas logo. That was my guy Jake Parks that worked on that. Put the Adidas logo on top, and now they became an Adidas school. So, the Olympics are always interesting on like how do you break through.
Do you think creating these moments are luck, or do you think that you can create them?
Planned, reactive.
Right.
Planned, reactive.
So you've got to move quick.
Is the name of the game. The confetti shot or the confetti commercial. I think Jordan mentions that all the time. Right after you win the championship, what's that first 30-second ad? Right? Is it Budweiser? Is it Nike or whoever is that it essentially says "win with the winners"? That was a great phrase that we had with Adidas all the time. Was "win with the winners," and it was building that association. When your asset is at its highest point, have the Gatorade bottle right here, have the logo right here, see it right there and make that overall connection. I think you saw that with Adidas when Indiana won the championship, right? You kind of saw Mendoza, Heisman winner, Adidas signed,
Yep.
all of those things coming together at one is amazing. I think one that happened today is shout out Adidas basketball. They're my biggest competition, but Anthony Edwards gets fined and they come out with an ad of a guy counting money, and it's just like,
How can you move that quickly? I mean, what does it take?
It's planning, it's setting a calendar of being prepared for a couple different moments, throughout the year, and things that
So you almost
may or
like
may not happen.
the game is going on. You're going to have to create a piece of content out of this.
Right.
We're not sure what it is yet, but we've got the capacity.
Right. Yeah. It's I mean, you have to anticipate these moments or you'll never have them. there's easy ones to say, okay, what if you win a championship, or what if you hit this accolade, or you hit a certain metric, birthdays, culture moments. Like those are the easy ones,
Hmm.
right? At the end of the day, the ones that are the challenging ones, it says, okay, how can I take this piece of content and how do I work it in a way that makes sense at the
Mm.
end of the day, right? That's authentic. Authenticity is the biggest thing. You can't just force something, throw something out to throw something out there. I think a lot of brands have tried to do that and failed miserably and probably ended up on Ad Age as, what not to do. But you got to take some risks sometimes. And like I said, I think you also have to be willing to create content that you believe might not ever see the light of day because it
You're
just
in,
doesn't make sense.
yeah, you're in the game of trust, building trust with the
Yeah.
consumer,
Yeah.
trust in the community, trust in the
Absolutely.
influencers, trust here, trust there. Really, right?
Absolutely.
Um,
I also like to say you got to be content rich, and there's a lot of times where people are content poor and they're media rich at the
yep.
end of the day, right? Or I like to say you're partnership rich and activation poor.
Mm.
Right, you're gonna take the girl to the prom. You better make sure you got the limo, the corsage, and everything else. You can't just buy the ticket and expect, okay, that's it, right? That's partnerships at the end of the day, right? You build that partnership, you got to make sure you have those marketing dollars to be able to fulfill those big moments at the end of the day. Because when that moment happens, your guy wins the championship, Kyrie makes the Western Conference Finals, you got to be ready.
Agreed.
If not, you're wasting your biggest opportunity at the end of the day, and that might not ever come back.
Mm.
It's not guaranteed at the end of the day. So I think that's the biggest challenge just within sports, man. You can be hot one day and you can be cold the next, but when you're hot, you got to ride it. You got to
Well, that's
ride
going to
it.
be ANTA, right?
Yeah,
No, they're going to be hot now, right?
absolutely.
Um,
Double, triple down.
our time's gone quick, but I want to end on one note. If you could magically
Yeah.
solve one problem at ANTA today, what would you solve?
Oh man, I mean translation. I work with a Chinese company, so I wish I could speak Mandarin all the time on that. Which actually, there's a lot of great AI tools that are helping us.
Sure.
Whether it's WeChat and it translates it, or even within some of our internal like messaging systems, they'll have subtitles now at the
Oh,
bottom.
yeah, you wouldn't be able to use what we normally use, right?
Yeah,
You got all your.
it's that Tower of Babel. Like, give me. I think the new AirPods have like a translator in there, so that would be my one thing is if I can get some translation there. But one thing that I would also say just on the ANTA front, little it be known, we own Amber Sports. So Wilson, Arc'teryx, Solomon, massive brands, popular cool kid brands, just being able to collaborate across, all the different ANTA brands, that's what I'm looking forward to.
And you said ANTA was. I mean, you described it like Disney in a way.
Yeah.
We should end on that. Like your thoughts on that. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's an incredible brand. And people have no idea, but they will soon, and they are.
Absolutely, yeah. I think I mentioned earlier. It's growth through acquisition at the end of the day, right? We're vertically integrated in a lot of ways. That's what makes us so strong. We have one of the highest gross margins in the industry because we own the majority of a lot of our own factories. That's where our beginnings come from. Is the factory that turned into the brand. So that allows us, have that higher gross margin, put more emphasis into product because we came from there. So that's the vertical integration, right? But also from a horizontal standpoint, being able to acquire brands, it's a really cool thing at the end of the day, right? It kind of makes the world a little bit smaller in some ways, but I look forward to the collaborations that we'll be able to have. We always like to say it's multiple brands with a single focus.
Mm.
Wilson is built around a racket at the end of the day. Solomon is built around the trail. So I think those really cool singular focus allow us to really double down on, the emphasis of that brand while having another brand stand right next to it that does, equally as well in its own discipline.
Pumped. Christian, thanks for
Absolutely.
coming on.
Thank you.
Appreciate you braving the LA traffic to get here as well.
I don't pass the 405 freeway unless it's for you. So here we
and
are.
excited to see the next store opening soon, I guess, right?
Likewise, coming soon.